history itself.
What if I told you that your imposter syndrome is showing on your resume and it's costing you thousands of dollars? Let me show you how to use Grammarly's AI features to write a more confident resume that actually lands you in the S pile. Start by writing down the following.
Yep. Refresh.
Let me show you how to use Grammarly's AI features to write a more confident resume.
Shut up. Oh, whatever. Make that go away. See if this one's doing it. Yep. Woohoo. I need to do. Oh. I wish I would do what I want. I'm gonna fucking freak out, bro. There we go. Yay. And now.
On the 20th of November in 1969, 3 days after Apollo 12 landed, NASA crashed the lunar module into the moon at 6,048 kilometers per hour. The impact released energy equivalent to 1 ton of TNT, and seismometers 72 kilometers away recorded the collision. Then what happened after that was pretty surprising to a lot of very smart people. You see, the moon, it rang like a bell. The moon, the rock in the sky. I might get exiled from Athens for saying that, but the moon rang like a bell because a piece of metal crashed into it. That seems really strange. And you know why it rang like a bell? Because the moon's hollow. After the Apollo 12 lunar module crashed into the moon, it began to ring. Not for minutes, not for an hour, but 55 minutes. So close to an hour. Of course, they expected some level of resonance and some seismic activity, but the moon vibrated like a struck bell. Neil Patrick Harris is even quoted as saying this in regard to the bell. Neil Armstrong, it was a joke. The Neil Patrick Harris thing was a joke. Anyways, Dr. Maurice Ewing, co-principal investigator of the Apollo passive seismic experiments and God in the geophysics world, struggled to explain and interpret the events. He said, "As for the meaning of it, I'd rather not make an interpretation right now, but it is as though one had struck a bell, say the belfry of a church, and it reverberated and continued for over 30 minutes. Thanks for coming on the show, Dr. Ewing. May God rest your soul. 30 minutes of ringing would have been extraordinary, but what they recorded was 55 minutes of ringing from the Apollo 12 lunar module crashing into the moon. But the 12 was just the beginning. Apollo 13 is next. 4 months later, Apollo 13's third stage, a 14,016 kilogram behemoth, slammed into the lunar surface with a force of 11.5 tons of TNT. Bigly!
By the way, Aquarius, we see the results now from 12's seismometer. Looks like your booster just hit the moon and it's rocking it a little bit. Over.
The vibrations there lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and penetrated 25 miles deep. How do they know this stuff? Oh, well, they were just nice, and they asked the moon what it was feeling. Just kidding. There's seismographs all over that sumbitch. As a result of both of these crashes, both of these incidents, NASA scientists and geniuses all over the world said the moon rang like a bell or reacted like a gong. That doesn't really make sense for a big rock. Does it? Maybe it does. It doesn't, though. Does it? Maybe it does. You ever find yourself reaching for that habit? Well, I often do. I love to pinch and pull and twist on various parts of my body. Maybe it's the stress, maybe it's boredom, maybe it's just having to keep your hands busy. Have I got something for you? Fume, today's sponsor, will come in great handies. I've already got my little buddy down here, the Holy Relic, hitting on that thing. He likes the maple pepper flavor the most. What you think, man? I'm not mad about that at all. You can still reach for something that's satisfying without having any downsides at all.
Woohoo.
Which is flavor, put a little stick in for a long time. I love it, and it's awesome, and you can break a bad habit with it. Over 500,000 people have made the switch to Fume as a part of. You can get a free Fume topper with a Journey Pack order. Go to tryfume.com. Cool, it's awesome. I genuinely love the flavors, and it's fun to mess with. I've had so many of these things. I think I've had 6 now, different ones. I just give them away, because I care about them and stuff, or whatever. Negative Fume Photo Control Department observed something even more disturbing. The moon didn't just ring, it wobbled. The entire lunar body shifted with a mechanical precision, and Johnson described it as almost as though it had giant hydraulic damper struts inside. Comment down below other voices I should do for guests of the show. That's also freaky though. I've done a lot of research on conspiratorial topics, and none have ever made me more puzzled. I'll use the word puzzled than the moon. Between 1969 and 1977, NASA's Apollo seismometers recorded over 13,000 different seismic events, and each one revealed the same impossible characteristics. The moon behaved like a seemingly hollow, maybe artificial structure, certainly not like a large rock. Don't exile me from Athens, okay guys? Comment down below if you get that reference. That's right, I said it. The moon is not a goddess, it's a rock. A hollow one. Press like. SIBB third stages into the moon, and every single impact produced the same or similar result. The moon rings like a bell, it vibrates for hours, and it wobbles with a bizarre mechanical precision. Now, I'm very uncomfortable. Praise be unto the Holy Relic. His shoulders look a little tight. Try to loosen him up. What's he doing in there? Probably jacking it. He's probably jacking it in there. These weren't anomalies, these weren't measurement errors, they were consistent, repeatable phenomena. That's probably why we don't go back up on that moon anymore, too, because it's scary. That's weird and scary, dude. So there's a question that emerged from NASA's own data. What if the moon is hollow and has aliens living in it? During the time American scientists are struggling to explain their seismic moon data, 2 researchers on the other side of the Iron Curtain were asking the unthinkable question. Not just saying, it's ringing like a bell. That's right. It's ringing like a bell. That's very odd. They're saying, it's hollow. In July 1970, Sputnik magazine published a paper that would shake lunar science across the Iron Curtain. The authors, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov from the Soviet Academy of Sciences, titled their work, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" This is in the 70s. And I'm not saying that just because Soviets wrote something in a magazine makes it real, but it is odd that they let them publish that, because they banned a lot of things, and they didn't exactly have freedom of speech, and it's kind of bizarre that that's like a... I mean, it seems weird, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem a little strange? The opening statement of this work cuts straight to the point. Although people long ago, suka blip. Although people, how do you do a Russian accent? Although people long ago began to wonder whether the canals on Mars were creation of cosmic engineer. For some odd reason, it has not occurred to look with the same eyes upon the peculiarities of the lunar landscape much closer at hand. That's like 9 different accents in one. The Soviet scientists had studied the same Apollo data that baffled NASA, but reached a radically different conclusion. The moon wasn't just behaving strangely, it wasn't something we can explain, it's an artificial construct. aka a spaceship. That's the point. A hollow sphere created by extraterrestrial intelligence and deliberately placed in Earth's orbit so we can have cool, fun maps and COD zombies. Vazin and Sherbakov presented detailed calculations, architectural blueprints, and engineering specifications for their spaceship moon. They also made this fun little song. The moon's so hollow. The moon's so hollow.
Demon so holy. What the fuck? Okay, dude.
They didn't make a song. That wasn't by them. They didn't write that. That's I don't know who wrote that, actually. It's weird. The analysis of bite impacts from meteorites ranging from small rocks to objects over 60 miles in diameter, every single crater maintained the same approximate depth, that is 1.2 to 2 miles. The craters varied tremendously in width, some spanning hundreds of miles, but their depth remained bizarrely consistent. To me, that's freaky. These two men came up with an architectural explanation for the reason behind this. The moon, you see, possesses a protective hull exactly 2.5 to 3 miles thick. So no matter how large the impact, meteorites could only penetrate this outer skin before hitting something far more substantial beneath, preventing there from being much variation in the depth. But that anomaly is just the beginning. Beneath lay a secondary armor layer, an inner hull that's 20 miles thick, protecting the hollow interior. So you have a small thin layer on the tip, and then you got a big gigantic layer on the bottom, and then you have a hollow center where people live. So the Soviets weren't describing a natural satellite, they were describing an alien spacecraft.
Why does it do
Hollow
that?
moon. So we have the Soviet theory, which you could say is academic speculation, or you could just buy it wholesale. But what about NASA whistleblowers? How do you feel about that? This chapter is fairly interesting because we're going to talk about some incidents involving the moon. Not just from NASA this time, but some interesting stuff from throughout history. Some activity, I guess you could say, in regard to our buddy in the sky. If the moon were truly the dead, lifeless rock that losers want us to believe, scientists, it should remain perfectly static. There should be no changes, no lights, no activity, just an ancient cratered sphere that reflects sunlight and looks like cheeses. But for over 450 years, we have astronomers, amateur stargazers, and even NASA's own astronauts that have documented something unsettling and disturbing. The moon is alive with unexplained phenomena. These are not isolated incidents, they're a systematic pattern of activity that has been documented in official government reports, peer-reviewed scientific papers again, and NASA technical publications. This isn't just data and the moon ringing like a bell. This is people seeing weird, unexplained shit. In July of 1968, just months before Apollo 11, NASA published a technical report R277, the Chronological Catalog of Reported Lunar Events. This document represented the most comprehensive official acknowledgement that the moon exhibits unexplained activity. The report covered 427 years of observations from 1540 to 1967 and documented 579 separate instances of anomalous lunar phenomena. This isn't just folklore, there is some, but this includes observations by the world's most respected astronomers using the finest telescopes available. Later, expanded catalogs would document over 2,254 individual events, which creates a database of lunar activity that defies explanation, especially if the moon were truly a dead planetary, celestial, beautiful little sexy body up there. NASA classified these phenomena into 5 distinct categories. 1. Gaseous mists and obscurations. 2. Reddish colorations. 3. Green, blue, or violet colorations. 4. Brightenings. 5. Darkenings. Makes sense. Thank you, NASA. Each category suggests active processes occurring on or within the lunar surface. Gaseous emissions implies internal activity, color changes suggest potentially energy releases, brightenings and darkenings indicate controlled illumination systems. Maybe the aliens turn their lights off and on, like Nosferatu, and SpongeBob. Plus, the patterns aren't random. They're clustered around specific lunar features and occurred at predictable intervals and exhibited characteristics consistent with artificial lighting and some atmospheric control systems. And one location in particular dominates the transient phenomena reports more than any other. That is the Aristarchus crater, a relatively young impact feature measuring 40 kilometers in diameter. By 2007, astronomers had documented 122 TLP reports from Aristarchus. This makes that crater more than 30 times more active than any other young craters of similar size. And the activity at Aristarchus wasn't subtle. Observers reported dramatic color changes, intense brightening events, and gaseous emissions visible through Earth-based telescopes. And the phenomenon occurred with such regularity that experienced lunar observers knew to monitor Aristarchus during periods of enhanced activity. Aristarchus' most significant moment came during Apollo 11, which was humanity's first lunar landing mission. On July 19, 1969, as Apollo 11 approached the moon, Neil Armstrong made an observation that NASA would record in official mission transcripts but never fully explained. While orbiting the lunar surface, Armstrong reported unusual illumination in the Aristarchus region. Armstrong noted, "Area considerably more illuminated than surrounding area. Seems to have a slight amount of fluorescence." Fluorescence, Neil Armstrong? On an airless world with no atmosphere to create aurora effects, no electrical storms to generate plasma phenomena, and no volcanic activity produce fucking glowing gases, Neil Armstrong? Are you sure? You're describing a light bulb then. Or artificial lighting, Neil Armstrong. Don't punch me in the face. Now, what is particularly significant about this is that Aristarchus lays on the moon's far side during the orbital pass, so it's shrouded in lunar night. Any illumination Armstrong observed had to originate from the lunar surface itself or from within the moon, not the sun, or originate from Apollo 11 with and gaseous emissions visible through Earth-based telescopes. And the phenomenon occurred with such regularity that experienced lunar observers knew to monitor Aristarchus during periods of enhanced activity. Aristarchus' most significant moment came during Apollo 11, which was humanity's first lunar landing mission. On July 19, 1969, as Apollo 11 approached the moon, Neil Armstrong made an observation that NASA would record in official mission transcripts but never fully explained. While orbiting the lunar surface, Armstrong reported unusual illumination in the Aristarchus region. Armstrong noted, "Area considerably more illuminated than surrounding area. Seems to have a slight amount of fluorescence." Fluorescence, Neil Armstrong? On an airless world with no atmosphere to create aurora effects, no electrical storms to generate plasma phenomena, and no volcanic activity produce fucking glowing gases, Neil Armstrong? Are you sure? You're describing a light bulb then. Or artificial lighting, Neil Armstrong. Don't punch me in the face. Now, what is particularly significant about this is that Aristarchus lays on the moon's far side during the orbital...
Fuck, where is it? I know it's on here. Where is it? Or maybe it was Buzz Aldrin. Maybe it was Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, it was fucking Buzz Aldrin. Where's the good video of it? Oh, come on. Wait, what?
We can help. We can join with. Together, we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there?
What the
Well,
fuck?
the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there. Maybe
Well, he's talking about Phobos. That's the moon of Mars, right? Yeah. Phobos. Well, that's not how you spell that. Monolith, I guess. I mean, that's a really shitty fucking picture. Yeah, that's a really shitty picture. Are particles ejected from an area. Pyroclastic materials that came out of a volcanic explosion and magma eruption volcanic vent or crater has traveled through the air or water. Bruh. Wasn't there, like... But they haven't taken any other pictures since then. What is that? Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
On September 9th.
No. Is this the actual video? Yes.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you
That's
walked
him right
on the moon? Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon? Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything.
Tell him to get out of here.
This is a hotel.
We'll call
Right,
the police.
We paid.
Come on in here, we'll call the police.
Solicit on
You like
this.
that?
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
It doesn't, sir. I don't have nothing to do with this. But
Okay.
you cannot solicit on this property.
We just paid
now,
to rent out the penthouse to shoot up there. So
you can't solicit like this on this property.
keep shooting.
All right. Well, then I'd go through my measures.
You got to keep shooting, man. Okay. Well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy.
Come with me, Buzz.
You really like adventure, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I
Will you
misrepresented
get
myself.
away from me?
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
See it
I
again.
misrepresented
Get
myself.
away from me?
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Damn! He fucking decked him too. Fucked his ass up, son.
It'll pass, so it's shrouded in lunar night. Any illumination Armstrong observed had to originate from the lunar surface itself or from within the moon, not the sun, or someone on Earth shining a really bright flashlight at it or something like that. So that's pretty interesting. Now, how about William Herschel, the astronomer who saw lunar volcanoes? This is one of the most dramatic historical observations, and that comes from Sir William Herschel, the astronomer who discovered Uranus and revolutionized our understanding of the solar system as we knew it in that time. Herschel possessed some of the finest telescopes of his
didn't
era
have
and
to say it
meticulous
that way.
observational skills, and this all made him one of history's most respected astronomers. On May 4th, 1783, Herschel observed something that knocked his weave off. Something that challenged everything science thought it knew about the moon. Through his telescope, he watched a red glow emanating from the Aristarchus crater bright enough to register a magnitude 4, visible to the naked eye under ideal conditions. That's substantial, and Herschel's observations continued over several years. On April 19th through the 20th in 1787, he documented what he described as 3 active volcanoes on the lunar surface, including another intense brightening event at Aristarchus. Herschel published his findings in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society, lending this some level of scientific credibility to reports of bizarre lunar activity. We know now that he was not observing volcanic eruptions because the moon lacks the geological activity necessary for volcanism. So yeah, that's not possible, Herschel. Sorry, dumbass. What he was witnessing was controlled illumination events from an artificial source. It was Nosferatu. So NASA's documentation of lunar transient phenomena represents both a form of disclosure and a form of concealment. By officially cataloging the events, the agency acknowledges that they occurred, but by classifying them as transient lunar phenomena rather than evidence of hollow moon, NASA maintains the fiction that the moon is a rock. This being just months before Apollo 11 suggests NASA was preparing the public for astronaut observations of lunar activity, and by establishing an official framework for unexplained phenomena, the agency gets to acknowledge astronaut reports without having to actually admit their true significance, which is what the government has done with the UAP stuff, in all honesty. Just pointing things out here. So yeah, basically the moon has been watching us, and at certain points in history, it wanted us to know. By turning the lights on and off like Nosferatu and SpongeBob! These aren't conspiracy theorists, these aren't shovel-chin chads like myself on YouTube speculating. These are NASA employees, military technicians, and contractors with security clearances who claim to have seen evidence that NASA or other government agencies were covering up lunar discoveries. First comes Don Wilson, the popularizer. In 1975, Don Wilson, an author, published Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, which was the first comprehensive English language exploration of the hollow moon theory. And Wilson didn't just rehash the Soviet work, he claimed sources inside NASA confirmed his theories, which, you know, I could also say that, but Wilson's most explosive allegations involve secret communications during Apollo missions. According to his sources, astronauts regularly encountered unexplained phenomena but were instructed to use coded language, and in his 1979 follow-up, Secrets of Our Spaceship Moon, Wilson published what he claimed was actual dialogue between Neil Armstrong and Mission Control, and it reads as follows. Armstrong says to Mission Control, "What the hell was that? Those babies are huge, enormous. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there, lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us. I'm Neil Armstrong." Wilson insisted that NASA privately admits that this is true, which what that exactly means, I'm not totally sure. Wilson also insists that the Apollo missions were routinely followed by alien spacecraft, which I believe that shit. So the moon wasn't just hollow, it was also aliens, corroboration. We've got the Soviets, we've got Don, genius author. Now how about Carl Wolf, the technician who saw a bit too much? On September 11th, 2001, something terrible happened. But at some other point in the year in 2001, during Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project press conference, former Air Force Sergeant Carl Wolf stepped forward and shed some light on something quite interesting. He shared a testimony that had the UFO research community ringing like a bell. Mr. Wolf served from 1964 to 1968 with a top secret crypto clearance, which is even better than a normal top secret clearance because you get access to different cool authentication stuff and lots of crypto secrets. Not really. This is the 1960s. Carl was working as a precision electronics photograph technician at Langley Air Force Base. And in 1965, 4 years before Apollo 11, Wolf was sent to work on equipment processing NASA lunar photographs. So this guy got to see some shit. This is what he said at that press conference in 2001, September 11th. Just kidding. "We walked over to one side of the lab and he said, 'By the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon,'" Wolf recalled. The technician then showed Wolf a mosaic of photographs revealing structures that defied any logical explanation. "Then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base which had geometric shapes. There were towers, spherical buildings. even something phallic the shape of a penis. There were very tall towers and things like that. They looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were very large structures. So Wolf was looking at photographs of artificial structures on the moon that were taken in 1965 before any human had supposedly even set foot on the beautiful celestial body of the moon. And that's freaky. Next we have a NASA scientist, a fellow by the name of George Leonard. Now, George claimed to be a former NASA scientist who had analyzed thousands of official NASA photographs. And in 1976, George published Somebody Else is on the Moon, which is a scary, scary title for anything to publish. That's freaky. And George presented photographic evidence of massive artificial structures covering the lunar surface. Now, of course, he doesn't attach any of these images, but he describes them, and his descriptions read like science fiction, but he insists on his reputation that every claim was based on careful analysis of NASA imagery. Immense mechanical rings, some over a mile long, working the lunar surface. He cataloged vehicles, tracks, towers, and more. Pipes, conduits, conveyor belts. He also described motors on the moon's surface as big as the Bronx. Which we can look at the moon now, so I feel like maybe that's not true.
That was my hat.
Just like look at it, and you can't see that stuff. But there is a dark side of the moon as well. And that's where all this stuff apparently lays. So yeah, the author of There's Somebody Else on the Moon, an ex-NASA scientist who used to look at photographs for NASA, screams that he's seen evidence that the moon has life on it and that there is no denying the truth. The moon is occupied by an intelligent race of aliens. That's right. The moon is not only hollow, it's also a functioning base for extraterrestrials with moon operations.
That's no
massive
moon,
machinery
that's
working
a
on the surface.
space station.
Sounds like Factorio, to be honest. Then we have Donna Hare, and you're going to notice a bit of a pattern here is all these people saw photographs. Nobody actually went to the moon and saw this crazy shit, but they saw photographs and they're like, what? Donna worked as a technical illustrator for Philco Ford at NASA for 15 years, from 1967 to 1981, and she received the Apollo Achievement Award from NASA in 1969. So she had full-on access to NASA's photo laboratories, and that gave her a front row seat to the systematic manipulation of lunar imagery. So the theory here is that Donna witnessed all of the images from the moon being doctored and changed to prevent us peons on Earth from seeing green people and Factorio saves that are incredibly impressive. Hare testified that she regularly witnessed photo technicians airbrushing UFOs and anomalous objects from lunar photographs before public release.
But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public. So they're pesky little creatures appearing on this photograph they wanted to get rid of.
And according to her testimony, astronauts use the code word Santa Claus when reporting UFO sightings during missions, which is unbelievable. And most disturbing were her claims about astronaut testimony. Hare alleged that astronauts were threatened to stay quiet about their encounters and that NASA maintained strict protocols to prevent public disclosure of any anomalous discoveries.
The Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed. And that is what he told me. And he also was afraid, he said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it.
But what about the story of Ken Johnston, the archive manager? Ken is seen as one of the more credible whistleblowers in the hollow moon theory. I'm sure people are going to get really mad at me saying that, but from my research, this is what we gathered. Ken worked for the NASA.
They're not allowed to talk about it.
But what about the story of Ken Johnston?
Oh, I guess we could do it right here. What the fuck is that?
The archive manager. Ken is seen as
not Jen. Ken. What did they say he was? An archive manager. Okay.
Is one of the more credible whistleblowers in the hollow moon theory. I'm sure people are going to get really mad at me saying that, but from my research, this is what we gathered. Ken worked for the NASA contractor, the Brown and Root Corporation, from 1969 to 1972. By the way, I'm not going to just move past the Brown and Root Corporation. That is the worst ever that has ever existed. Ken was a manager of the data and photo control department at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and Johnston's role gave him unprecedented access to the complete photographic record of the Apollo missions. And according to his testimony, he was ordered to destroy 5 complete sets of Apollo photographs, but he secretly saved one complete collection. And Johnston claims that these preserved photographs contain clear evidence of artificial structures and that he personally witnessed strippers or people who systematically remove anomalies from images before they're released, just like Donna did. So we have some corroboration here. This is how the truth is found. In the photos, Johnston claims to have saved allegedly show the same structures that were described by Carl and George way back in the past. Geometric buildings, towers, and clear signs of artificial construction on the surface of the moon. So yeah, these aren't just random internet people making wild claims. These are people making claims a long time ago that are wild. And these people have experience and track records in these worlds. So it's more like a bunch of Bob Lazars instead of just a bunch of me's. These are people with security clearances, NASA credentials, and direct access at some point to the source material that they're basing their testimony on. And their testimonies paint a consistent picture.
I love that he has
and the
a
picture
halo
is that
chair.
NASA knows that the moon is hollow and they are suppressing that information to protect us, I guess. Beyond the testimonies and theory lay cold, hard data. I guess. I haven't used this camera yet. Beyond the testimonies and theories lay cold, hard. For our cold, hard data, we have measurements taken by NASA's own instruments, calculations performed by respected scientists, and numbers that don't add up unless the moon is fundamentally different from every other planetary body in our solar system, which is possible. Because it's hollow, and this evidence wasn't hidden. It's not hard to find, even. It was published in peer-reviewed journals, presented at scientific conferences, and recorded by the most sophisticated instruments humanity had ever sent into space. And the mystery wasn't that the data is secret, it's that most scientists refuse to consider what the numbers are showing or telling them. Part A of this is the density paradox. The moon doesn't weigh enough. It's too skinny. The density of the Earth measures 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter, which is typical for a rocky planet with a substantial iron core. The moon's density is just 3.34 grams per cubic centimeter. So the moon is 60% of the Earth's density. And for a body supposedly formed from the same primordial material as the Earth, it's a pretty big discrepancy that defies some level of explanation. Rocky planets should have similar densities. Mars is 3.93, Venus is 5.24, Mercury is 5.43, and all of these fall within the expected range for solid planetary bodies. The moon is an outlier. It's a 2,162 mile diameter sphere that weighs far less than it should. Something even more puzzling is the moon's moment of inertia factor, which is this. This number suggests an almost uniform density.
A quantity expressing a body's tendency to resist angular acceleration. It is the sum of the products of the mass of each particle in the body with the square of its distance from the axis of rotation. I read it. Let me read it again. A quantity expressing a body's tendency to resist angular acceleration. It is the sum of the products of the mass of each particle in the body with the square of its distance from the axis of rotation. Like, It loses me exactly here. Everything after this, I don't know what that means. That's my fault, though.
Density throughout the interior of the body, which a solid sphere of uniform rock should have a factor of 0.4, but if the moon contained a dense core like the other planets, that factor should be significantly lower. This measurement suggests that the moon's interior is remarkably uniform, which is exactly what you would expect from a hollow sphere. Its walls were consistently thick. Dr. Gordon MacDonald, a NASA geophysicist, published a statement in 1962 saying, "If the astronomical data are reduced, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon be less dense than the outer parts. Indeed, it would seem that the moon is more like a hollow sphere than like a homogeneous sphere." May God rest his soul.
Oh, dang it.
So that guy said it. He isn't a fringe theorist. He's a respected NASA scientist analyzing official data, the data that they had available at the time. So Dr. MacDonald, a well-respected guy. Unlike maybe some of the whistleblower people, this guy's legit. He's a real geophysicist. And he was analyzing official data and coming to a conclusion. The conclusion is that the moon's interior was less dense than the exterior shell, which is pretty unusual. It's like the opposite of a Ferrero Rocher. It's like one of those eggs. Those like eggs you get on Easter where it's real soft in the middle and the exterior is hard and shit. Bro, is not like a Ferrero Rocher with a hard, nutty core. In 1968, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory made a discovery that was fairly interesting. They discovered that the moon contained massive gravitational anomalies called mascons, which is mass concentrations that create gravitational fields up to 200 milligauss stronger than expected. So this sounds like crazy, insane shit, but it's pretty sciencey and it does make sense. Get this. These mascons were so powerful that they could pull a plumb bob 1/3 of a degree off a vertical. Can you imagine finding an area where you got a little piece of metal on the end of a string and it's like, zit? Huh? Because of a massive concentration of shit? That's so confusing to me. More significantly, these mascons made low lunar orbit completely unstable. So spacecraft attempting to maintain a circular orbit around the moon would crash within months as the mascons gradually pulled them off of course. These mascons clustered beneath the moon's largest impact basins, the Mare Imbrium, the Mare Serenitatis, and the Mare Crisium. But also, the gravitational signatures of these mascons made no sense for natural geological features. They're too massive, too precisely located, and too geometrically perfect. Traditional planetary science suggests that these basins should show gravitational deficits. For example, there should be less mass where giant impacts had excavated material, but instead they show the opposite. Concentrated masses as if dense material had been deliberately placed beneath each impact site, aka the hollow moon. So the mascons, pretty sketchy, pretty odd. What is that? Could be pillars holding up the hollow shell. I'm not exactly sure. So anyways, let's circle back a bit on the crater depth conspiracy that was first introduced, that we first introduced from our Soviet friends. Every large lunar crater tells the same bizarre and seemingly impossible story, regardless of the size of the impact that's created these, regardless of the speed or angle of the meteorite. Every major crater maintains virtually identical depths. The Tycho crater is 85 kilometers in diameter, only 4,800 meters deep. The Copernicus crater, 93 kilometers in diameter and 3,800 meters deep. On Earth, crater depth varies dramatically with impact size. For example, a meteor capable of creating an 85-kilometer crater would excavate far deeper than one creating a 10-kilometer crater. The moon's craters are bizarre. Every impact was hitting at the same barrier at the same depth, between 1.2 and 2 miles below the surface, exactly the depth predicted by Vassin and Sherbakov's Hall thickness calculations, which is kind of odd. It's almost as if every meteorite is striking an armored shell rather than a solid rocky body, like my solid rocky body. Go to Power Boys, sign up. I've been working out a lot with my friends. Check that out. Guns Welcome to the gun show. So, you've got seismometers that were set up to measure vibrations back in the 60s and 70s. This network revealed properties that defy conventional planetary science. For example, the moon's Q factor, which is a measure of how efficiently it transmits seismic energy, measures approximately 3,600. Now, this number probably means nothing at all to you, but this indicates extremely low energy attenuation, meaning vibrations could propagate for extraordinary distances without losing strength. No solid planetary body that we know of exhibits such properties. Earth's Q factor rarely exceeds 600. Mars, Venus, and other rocky planets show similar damping characteristics as the Earth. And for your information, high Q factors are associated with hollow or highly structured materials. Bells, drums, engineered resonance chambers, you name it. Things that are made by aliens. So that's kind of odd. Deep moonquakes originating from 600 to 1,000 kilometers below the surface provide another anomaly. These occurred deeper than any earthquake on Earth and exhibited characteristics suggesting that they originated at boundaries between different materials. And the depth and regularity suggests that they were occurring at the interface between an outer shell and an inner cavity, aka somewhere in the hollow moon. And mysteriously, moonquakes showed remarkable periodicity, clustering around the times when Earth's gravitational pull was strongest. And this suggests that the moon's interior is responding to tidal stress in ways consistent with a hollow structure under strain. So, odd. Very odd. The seismic data paints a picture that hollow moon theorists find impossible to ignore. A hollow sphere with walls approximately 25 miles thick, exactly matching the Soviet scientists' architectural specifications. Remember those guys that sang that song earlier? Those guys. They're right. Every measurement, every calculation, every piece of data points towards the same bizarre and impossible conclusion. The moon isn't behaving like a natural satellite. It is exhibiting characteristics of an artificial construct designed and positioned by intelligence far beyond human capabilities. And the best part is, the evidence isn't hidden in a government vault. Some of it probably is, but it's published in NASA technical reports and analyzed by university researchers and confirmed by independent space agencies around the world. The scientific community has the data, and they simply refuse to believe that the moon is hollow. But they do acknowledge that it is strange, that the moon is really a weird thing. I hope you guys see what I'm doing with this video, by the way. I'm not a crazy person. I'm going to debunk all of this at the end. More than 50 years after the Apollo missions first opened the can of worms that is the moon, modern technology is continuing to reveal more of the moon's anomalous properties. All right, guys, we have advanced space technology right now. Since 2020, a new generation of lunar missions equipped with sophisticated sensors, ground-penetrating radar, and precision sampling equipment has produced discoveries that would have even seemed impossible to previous generations of scientists, in spite of what they were finding. China's Chang'e program, Chang'e, I don't know how to actually say it, has, let's just say, completely revolutionized lunar science through a series of increasingly sophisticated missions that have culminated in the first successful sample returns from the moon's dark side, the far side of the moon. And these samples are deeply troubling, right? Chang'e 5, which returned samples from Oceanus Procellarum in 2020, brought back the youngest mare basalts ever analyzed, rocks dated to just 2 billion years old. This represented volcanic activity far more recent than models predicted for a body supposedly cooling and dying since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. Chang'e 6 went in 2024, and its return from the far side revealed something even more extraordinary, a dramatic compositional asymmetry between the moon's near and far sides that defies explanation through natural process, but artificial process, hollow moon. There were water content measurements that were striking. Near-side examples contained approximately 200 micrograms of water per gram of rock, which is surprisingly high for, once again, a bone-dry body that formed in the inner solar system, but far-side samples contain only 1 to 1.5 micrograms per gram, which is more than 100 times less water than the near side. And this asymmetry makes no sense for a naturally formed body, and if the moon had formed from Earth debris following a giant impact, both sides should exhibit similar water content by logic and rationale and science. Has the artificial inhabitants of the moon been conserving water on the near side? I don't know. Let's ask Chang'e 7. Japan's Selene mission, also known as Kaguya, provided crucial data about the moon's internal structure that has challenged general assumptions in the way that planets are formed. In 2014, Dr. Yuji Harada's team discovered what they described as an extremely soft layer deep inside of the moon. And according to their analysis, the interior of the moon has not cooled and hardened and is still being warmed by the effect of the Earth. That's what they said. That's crazy. A solid rocky body the moon size should have completely cooled billions of years ago. Okay, guys? The discovery of soft, warm material deep within the lunar interior suggests it is very comfortable and nice and cozy inside. And it also suggests there's active processes maintaining elevated temperatures, exactly what you'd find from an artificial facility with ongoing energy systems. So yeah, you heard this right. According to the Japanese, the moon's interior is fundamentally different from other planetary bodies. It's not a cold, dead rock. It's a soft, comfy, warm facility brimming with alien life. In 2024, scientists confirmed the existence of a massive cave system 150 meters beneath Mare Tranquillitatis, measuring approximately 80 meters long and 45 meters wide. Ground-penetrating radar had detected the cavity, and subsequent analysis confirmed it represented only a small section of a much larger underground network of moon caves. Mainstream science interpreted these as lava tubes, which are natural tunnels formed by ancient volcanic activity, but people like myself see something far more significant: access points to the moon's hollow interior. Then take 2022. Director Roland Emmerich releases Moonfall, a $138 to $146 million blockbuster depicting the moon as an artificial Dyson sphere built by an ancient alien intelligence. Clever Hollywood fiction or
why
soft
have I
disclosure?
not heard about
You
that?
tell me.
I did not know about that movie. Oh, it's got, is that fucking, yeah, that's Halle Berry. Huh. I'm probably gonna watch that tonight. Actually, I'll see if it's on the... Hell yeah. I'm definitely watching that shit tonight.
Before we get into the debunking, I would like to say that there are some coincidences about the moon that do make it seem strange, unnerving, if you will. Coincidental. It's you know, there's a miracle, the Big Bang's a miracle, right? There's a lot of things that just don't make any sense that we cannot wrap our minds around. And it's weird when it's like a little ball up there in the sky up there. It's like, we don't really understand all that. Are you kidding me? I look at that 1 second, I totally understand it. Then I start thinking about it, and I'm like, wait, the tides? You mean the water would be everywhere if the moon wasn't here? Well, that's scary. Maybe I don't understand it. Let's talk about the human eye for a second and how it relates to the moon being created artificially. Science people have acknowledged for decades that the human eye wasn't designed for our current atmosphere. The prevalence of myopia, astigmatism, and other modern vision problems suggest our visual system evolved under different atmospheric conditions. And research shows that the human's eye's spectral sensitivity is optimized for wavelengths around 550 nanometers, aka the green lightsaber from the prequels. Studies also indicate that human vision would be better suited in an atmosphere with different composition and density. The higher rates of vision problems in modern populations, affecting between 30 and 40% of people in developed countries, point to a fundamental mismatch between our eyes and our environment. What I'm saying is that before the moon showed up, the Earth was bigly different, and atmosphere made our eyes happy. And we lived in that atmosphere for such a long time that our eyes evolved for that atmosphere. This nonsense I'm saying becomes more significant when we examine ancient accounts from civilizations worldwide that describe dramatically different atmospheric conditions before the arrival of the moon. It's bugging here, dude. Come on. Many ancient civilizations preserve remarkably similar accounts of atmospheric transformation that coincides with the moon's appearance in the Earth's sky. The Epic of Gilgamesh is amongst us. I love the Epic of Gilgamesh and other flood
I
stories.
have
Let's get into it. These aren't
delved
just
into that a little bit.
isolated folklore incidents. These are incidents that represent consistent testimony across continents and cultures and periods of time. Aboriginal people of Australia and various African tribes, including the Dogon, maintain oral traditions stating that women never experienced menstrual cycles until the moon appeared, and these accounts describe the moon's arrival as fundamentally altering human biology and the natural rhythms of the earth. Ancient texts from civilizations across the globe describe a world before the moon where the atmosphere was dense with mist, creating a greenhouse effect that filtered sunlight differently and made everything green, like that lightsaber from the
this is
prequels.
wild.
The air was
All of
described
this
as
is
being
wild.
more humid, thicker, jungle-like, old. And if this were reality, it would create optimal conditions for the human visual system. And we apparently evolved under those circumstances, according to the ancients. And the biblical account of the Great Flood correlates with many of these traditions as well. Ancient sources describe that when the moon appeared in the sky, this misty canopy collapsed, and that caused torrential rains that lasted for extended periods of time. My favorite, the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh, Hindu Puranas, and dozens of other flood narratives from unconnected cultures all describe identical atmospheric collapse events and conditions. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, how about tidal lock? Ever heard of that? You've probably been to the beach and you've seen the tides go in and go out, and you're probably like, "Mommy, why does the tide go in and go out?" And then your mom's like, "Why do you sound like Jerry Seinfeld, you ugly weirdo?" And then your just ego's hurt for years. But the moon presents the same face to Earth with absolute consistency. That's why people talk about the dark side of the moon. This phenomenon is called tidal locking, and it occurs when a satellite's rotational period exactly matches its orbital period. And for the moon, both measure precisely 27.3 days. Convenient for hiding things. The moon's tidal lock is mathematically perfect. There's no wobble, no drift, no decay. It maintains this position with the mechanical precision of a, you guessed it, engineered system rather than the gradual approximation of natural gravitational forces. Okay? Now, for an artificial spacecraft, perfect tidal lock would be essential. It would keep sensitive equipment, entry ports, and observation posts on the far side permanently hidden from Earth-based detection while maintaining optimal orbital positions. So that's right. Tidal lock in regard to the hollow moon theory has nothing to do with the beach. I just wanted to tell you guys a fun story. This next thing is puzzling and very interesting. Puzzling genuinely in a sense of like, I'm trying to be rational and understand this, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Not in the sense of trying to explain to you guys the hollow moon theory and give it as much credence as I possibly can before utterly debunking it massively at the end of this video. The most bizarre mathematical coincidence involved with the moon is the relationship between the moon, the earth, and the sun. During total solar eclipses, the moon appears to be exactly the same size as the sun when viewed from the surface of the earth, which is where we live. The sun measures 1.39 million kilometers in diameter, and our beautiful, sexy moon measures 3,474 kilometers. So the sun is approximately 400 times larger than the moon. So it should appear 400 times larger than the moon in the Earth's sky, right? The sun also sits approximately 400 times further from the Earth than the moon. So we have two 400-to-1 ratios that cancel each other out perfectly, which creates a nearly identical angular diameter of approximately a half a degree. Isaac Asimov called this coincidence remarkable back in 1965. It's a mathematical precision that is so exact that it defies probability calculations like many other things in regard to the moon. Jokes aside, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the moon, guys. No other planet, moon, or star system in the known universe has exhibited this characteristic that we have, that we are blessed with on this planet that we live on. Hollow moon people think that this is a deliberate placement. The moon's been precisely positioned there at the correct distance to, Our solar system contains 293 confirmed moons. Astronomers have discovered over 5,000 exoplanets, many with their own satellite systems, and in this vast catalog of celestial mechanics, not one moon exhibits the Earth-Moon proportional relationship. That's right, the moon measures 27% of Earth's diameter, and the next largest moon-to-planet ratio in our solar system is Charon-Pluto at 12%. Or less than half our moon's proportion. So most moons measure less than 5% of their planet's diameter. And across thousands of exoplanets and their satellites, none approach our moon's massive size relative to its primary. The Earth-Moon system is literally unique to the known universe, which is pretty shocking and pretty remarkable and fundamentally a head scratcher. And this impossibly large moon just happens to be positioned at exactly the right distance to create the perfect solar eclipse. Also a level of precision that astronomers acknowledge has no parallel anywhere else in the cosmos, the known cosmos. So bizarre. Now on to the debunking. So as excited as you might be by the hollow moon theory, it turns out mainstream science offers fairly reasonable explanations for every single anomaly and every coincidence and every piece of evidence that seems to point towards artificial construction of the hollow moon. It really comes down to what are you willing to believe and how
at this point
far
I
are you
believe
willing
in the
to
hollow
look
fucking
and in what
moon.
direction, because if you look in one direction you're going to find that it's hollow, and if you look in the other direction you're going to unequivocally find that it is not, and these people are stupid. But somehow if you're looking over here you believe that even though there's not as much evidence and that doesn't make as much sense. I don't really know, in all honesty, but I want to give some respect to both sides. I love science, and I don't actually think the moon is hollow, just in case you guys are wondering. Let's go through and explain some things that I think are important to explain. The seismic explanation, for example. What are those extended vibrations that made the moon ring like a bell? Well, NASA scientists point to a surprisingly simple explanation. The moon is dry. It is bone dry. Earth's rocks contain water that acts like a natural shock absorber, which dampens seismic waves within minutes, but lunar rocks, which are subjected to 4.5 billion years of solar radiation and cosmic bombardment, devoid of atmosphere, the moon is. I said that like Yoda. The planetary body is completely desiccated. It's totally dry. It's like a big piece of beef jerky. And when you strike a completely dry, rigid structure, vibrations can propagate for extraordinary periods of time without the rapid energy loss seen on water-bearing planets or planets with atmospheres. Dry rock exhibits what scientists call extremely high Q factors, meaning vibrations continue much longer than in Earth-based materials. And if you add in the moon's fractured upper crust, pulverized by eons of meteorite impacts into what geologists call a megaregolith, and you get intensive wave scattering without energy absorption. So you just get crazy bell ringing. Seismic energy bounces around like a light in a hall of mirrors and creates extended vibration periods that so mystified Neil Patrick Harris and the other Apollo astronauts. And also, modern seismic analysis reveals something pretty bad for the hollow moon theorists. Both compressional and shear waves propagate throughout the lunar interior, and that is measurable. We have the data that backs that, and this is impossible in a hollow space. The wave patterns map a solid, differentiated structure with distinct layers, exactly what you'd expect from a natural planetary body. But maybe it's a little dry, and it rings a little too long, and that's what seems like the end of the story, in all honesty. Now, as for the formation of the moon and the density, the moon's low density and unusual characteristics make a bit more sense when you understand how the moon formed. Around 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized object scientists called Theia slammed into the early Earth with unimaginable force and violence. Kind of like when I sit down too hard and I crush my ball and it goes... You know what I'm talking about? Does that ever happen to you guys? You know when you sit down too hard and you crush your ball and it goes... like Theia, and the way that it slammed into the Earth with unimaginable violence 4.5 billion years ago. This collision primarily ejected material from Earth's silicate mantle and crust, which is less dense rock, while both iron cores merged into the Earth's core. The resulting MOOP, aka the moon, inherited Earth's lighter materials but not its heavier iron core, and this explains the 60% density ratio without requiring hollow spaces. The moon's moment of inertia factor, this funny little number, matches predictions for a solid body with uniform density, and a hollow sphere would produce a factor of 0.67, so very different. Recent computer models show this giant impact could have formed the moon within hours and not years, which is mind-boggling and unbelievable, and isotopic analysis reveals subtle but measurable differences between Earth and moon rocks, supporting a violent and logical origin story that explains what we're talking about. So what about the eclipse coincidence, the tidal lock precision, and the geometric crater patterns, guys? Well, comment down below what you think happened, and I'll let you comment down below. Scientists have acknowledged that these are remarkable coincidences, but they are coincidences nonetheless. according to them. The moon's tidal lock occurs naturally through gravitational forces over geological time. Most large moons do exhibit this characteristic, and the eclipse ratio is temporary. The moon gradually recedes from Earth, meaning total solar eclipses will become impossible in about 500 million years. So, you know, while we're alive, while humans exist, it's perfect, but as soon as humans are gone in 500 million years, which I'm betting on that, praise be, the eclipse won't happen anymore, so. Luckily, it was around while we were here. And the crater depth consistency results from fairly well understood impact physics now. Maybe not so much in the late 60s and early 70s, but on a low gravity world like the Moon, large impacts naturally produce similar depth to diameter ratios due to gravitational collapse during crater formation. And the same patterns appear on Mercury, Mars, and Anus, and other cratered bodies throughout the solar system. So yeah, it makes sense. It's really not that big of a deal. Depending on whether or not you believe technology exists, this could be the most damaging to the hollow moon theory. Modern technology has thoroughly mapped the interior of the moon. NASA's Grail mission created gravitational maps accurate to within microns, revealing mass distributions consistent with natural planetary formation. There's no large hollow spaces that exist on the moon. If you believe that that's real, if you believe in that, there's no like the only images of the moon are composites and stuff. The Earth is flat, my penis is round, and it curves to the left. Oh! We also have high-res images from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that shows Apollo landing sites in stunning, beautiful detail, equipment, astronaut tracks, and even individual footprints that have been preserved in airless, atmosphere-free conditions with no rodents running around causing rodent erosion. And these same images reveal no evidence of, obviously they could airbrush it out or whatever, you know, but yeah. And also Chinese, Indian, Japanese, and European missions have all, and I think Iranian, no, I think they launched a monkey into space. I don't think they went to the moon yet, but they've all independently studied the moon using different instruments and techniques and with different cultures and governments, and some of these countries being completely at odds to one another, and they've all come to the same conclusion. The moon exhibits characteristics of a natural satellite formed through cosmic collision, but it's still funny and odd, and there are some things that are confusing about the moon that, you know, some coincidences that need to be acknowledged. So what about all the whistleblowers and all the people who used to work for NASA and all the scientists who talked about this? Well, the whistleblower accounts that seemed fairly compelling contained some credibility issues. For example, Carl Wolf's testimony emerged decades after the alleged incident with zero corroborating witnesses. Ken Johnston's claimed NASA position and academic credentials have been thoroughly debunked by space journalists. He's very much a Bob Lazar type of character, where, you know, he came out of kind of nowhere, and maybe he's telling the truth, maybe he's being harangued, and maybe there's like, that's why I say there's a bit of credence to that, because there is other people who I do believe more. I believe Bob Lazar more than I believe these hollow earth people, hollow moon people. So think of that one what you will, but George Leonard's photographic evidence relies on pareidolia, which is just seeing patterns and random shapes and shadows, which is hilarious, or at least that's what it seems like to me. And by the way, no other Apollo personnel have corroborated claims of alien encounters or systematic cover-ups. So India, China, Japan, Europe, every person who's ever been on the moon, they all are working together to prevent us from believing that there's a hollow moon. Seems like, I don't really know. So the moon could be hollow, and it could have been made by aliens, and they park it here, and they communicate with us, and they turn their blinkers on, and Nosferatu's up there flicking the switch. Or the moon could have formed in cosmic violence, sculpted by billions of years of impacts, and is now an incredibly important part of our daily lives that keeps water in the right place. And, both things are really crazy, to be honest. Both things are wild and unbelievable, but one of them is probably true. So yeah, after 55 years of accumulating evidence denying the moon's artificial nature requires greater faith than accepting it, in my opinion. The anomalies aren't going away, science people. Each new mission uncovers additional evidence supporting artificial construction while providing no data that definitively proves natural formation, aside from all the data we just talked about, to be honest. The moon rings like a bell because it's hollow. The craters maintain consistent depths because there's armor underneath. The rocks age backward because the moon was constructed, not accreted. All right? The photos are censored because they show artificial structures. The proportions are impossible because the moon was deliberately sized by some guy. The orbit is perfect because the moon was positioned and not captured. 55 years ago, NASA crashed a spaceship into the moon and it rang like a bell for nearly an hour. And that was humanity's first hint that our closest celestial neighbor might not be what it seemed. Every piece of evidence point towards it. I'm on it. We all
He's
got
on it. He is on it.
I was strolling on the moon one day.
Enough to bag the Blue Lake. But then we hit a big problem. And it wasn't the smoke. Hold still. Every time I try and home in on where I think the Blue Lake on the moon is, I lean a little bit. And that causes the roof to wobble a little bit. And that causes Big Bertha to fly off target. Lost it. And when you're hunting something this tiny, it's a deal breaker. I think I'm gonna call it a night. The good news, though, is that I survived in one piece, and next morning came up with a cunning plan. We're going.
Why put your life on pause? At University of Phoenix, you can finish your technology.
If we have the radio on and we turn it on, it will fly over there. Alto?
What is this? An electromagnetic? What is this machine?
Yeah.
What is it?
So, John Riley, he's a friend, and he invented this machine, and it's supposed to be producing electromagnetic field, or it does electromagnetic induction.
The vessel is much stronger now. Like that.
Yeah.
That,
You can see the purple color.
yeah. But the granite's still almost nothing.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Okay.
Combination of stones was specifically chosen to accomplish something. You know, nobody just goes to different quarries hundreds of kilometers far just to build something or for something symbolic, because colors and things like that and drawings can.
Obviously, there was a reason they were encasing all that limestone in granite.
And
or
the
vessel.
two different types of limestone as well. So this is closer to the finer type of limestone.
Okay, but what's the fucking point?
So the vessel is much stronger now. Like that.
Yeah.
That
Is it
You
just
can
like
see the purple.
Knowledge base, but it's also a product of the current time that we're in, and to some extent the location.
that tells me nothing?
I've got to say, I think it's the most baffling story of all. And I feel slightly infuriated with myself in that when it first...
About a month ago, while checking out an ancient rock art panel, I found steps carved into solid rock. I climbed them. I can't show that footage because YouTube demonetized that video. No explanation. No explanation was given to me, but I assume it was because someone sitting in an office who has never rock climbed considered it dangerous. Anyways, what I found at the top of that climb and in the canyon as a whole created a significant mystery. Believing there may be astronomical connections to what I found, I traveled back into the canyon near the summer solstice to see what would happen here during the sunrise and further explore the area. I returned hoping to solve the mystery, but what I found only deepened it.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew from Desert Drifter. As always, thanks for tuning in. So I'm hustling because there's a few key objectives that I want to accomplish this trip.
The thumbnail is blurred for YouTube's purposes, but if you haven't watched the first video, I highly recommend watching it. It'll help you understand the significance of what I'm seeing on this trip.
Objective 1 that we've got to get done today is I really want to check out the base of the two towers, you know, that overlooked the alcove and the pictographs and carved steps, all that. So it's 6:03 p.m. Been on the trail for about 30 minutes, trying to beat the heat, so I wanted to let the heat of the day pass. It's probably going to be about 6-ish miles tonight or this late afternoon, so let's get to it and see what we can find. Look at this big anvil-shaped rock. It's kind of interesting. I'll have to check up under that. I see white, but I can't tell if that's natural or not. Look at that. Once we came in view of the anvil, bam, there's the two towers. If nothing else, it's a cool formation. All right, gonna go around the other side. Just trying to go slow and look at all the rock faces. Okay, so here's the back side of the anvil rock. This is the first view I'm getting of the alcove. Pretty cool to see it from up here. So there are the carved steps and the ledge up there. Okay, here are the two towers. I am gonna see if I can find a way and kind of pick my way down and see if it's even possible to get down there by their bases. Let's see, nice. If this wasn't gonna go, I was not sure we were gonna get down. But yeah, that'll at least get me to the next layer. There's the first one, the one that looks like a bighorn sheep. So what first caught my eye were these lines over here, although looking closer, I think it's just some kind of a mineral secreting out of here. Just to put in perspective, again, where I'm at, there's the alcove down there. I'm coming in on this left side. This might be the end of the road for us. So looking closer at this, I mean, yeah, like if you had, climbing protection, a rope, getting up either here or here wouldn't be particularly difficult, and you would at least get to the next level. But I don't have those things with me, and I'm by myself. So I think I'm gonna send the drone up, and if for some reason I see something, super, super compelling, I'll think about it.
So here's the layout. It might not look like it, but this was a sheer face. The only way further would be to climb one of these cracks like I was describing. On the approach to this tower, I closely examined every rock face I could. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Now I set out to examine the towers and rock faces around them with the drone.
This may be the last ad you ever see. Because with the free ad block extension from Capital One Shopping,
These towers were very impressive up close. I drained an entire battery just circling them. I didn't see anything obvious that shed more light on the significance of everything, but it was only day one.
Well, believe it or not, it's 8 o'clock, and so I think I'm gonna throw the camera in my backpack and just try to get back to the car as quick as possible. It's beautiful lighting down there. Whew, all right. Felt good to move. All right, I want to move the car to a more established dirt road, just in case it storms tonight.
Some of the dirt road How about the other tower? What is its significance? The petroglyph could shed insight, but what is it? Is it a person, or merely a depiction of the tower itself?
Well, obviously I need to keep working my way around now. Here's a pretty cool angle of the sheep tower. That was a steep climb. Climbed up to check out some of these desert varnish panels. That is the sheep tower right above me, but I don't see anything, surprisingly. Hours, you think, Andrew?
Yeah.
Maybe pushing 5. So we need some calories. We're both tanking a little bit. We're gonna walk down this